Okay. So as thank you, Sarah. As Sarah said, Phil and I will be spending the next 60 minutes or so to talk to you about the EIA and the health impact assessment. Okay. The agenda will be roughly, well, it's mainly focusing on the syllabus, its development, its content, and we'll be provide you with some sample questions for discussions. For the background of the syllabus and the body of knowledge formulations, back in 2015, Phil and I were nominated to be the sub-panel in charge for the EIA and HKIA. And we have been working together with our sub-panel members, including, I think, 6 of our current and past Hong Kong IEI, the Institute of EIA's chairmen, as well as academia like Professor Casey Lam, Professor Kenneth Leung, and Professor Incho Lam, as well as Peter Lee. Peter Lee is one of the is the largest employer for the environmental consulting in Hong Kong. He's from Airport Authority Hong Kong. And after the formulations, we have to report the findings to our qualification panel chair, Professor Alice Lai. So this is actually really telling you about the quality of the body of knowledge, the applicabilities of the question set or the body of knowledge is applicable to the industry in Hong Kong. Right, the syllabus, as I said, will be talk you through in the next couple of in these sessions. I'm surely most of you has already read about the syllabus details, and I will go through each of the. Phil and I will go through each of them, and to show you. Well, actually, it's not to teach you, what to learn or whatsoever, but it's actually provide you some guidance on what needs to be looked for, as the practitioners. Okay, so to begin with is the EIA legal system and its operations. Now, EIA ordinance has been in place almost 20 years now. And for you as the practitioners, actually, this is nothing new to you because this is extract from the relevant EIO the guidance notes. Okay, it's just showing you, what needs to be, what project needs to be applied for the environmental permit, what needs to be prepared for the EIA report. Okay, and there are different routes of doing it. Okay, one could be the most easy way is the direct apply, but it's very, very difficult to get EPD's consent to apply through this route. And the normal route is to apply through the preparation of the EIA report and to obtain the EIA, to obtain the environmental permit before the project can be executed. Now, for those they are less familiarized with the process, I'm surely you're able to make reference to the information provided in the website provided by the EPD. There's a really good help bench website here, just to show you step by step about the executions, about the background information on the EIA process here. So, for recap, for revisions or whatsoever, this will be able to provide you with a lot of information, as well as you are able to find some existing or the past EIA reports been done in the past, as well as some EIO guidance notes you can also find in there. Now, exactly what project needs to carry out a EIA? Okay, is it something like normal trend excavations or the utilities company, like the PCCW, whether they need to apply for the EIA? Well, not really. No. What is really need to be to carry out EIA to obtain EPD before project execution will be those designated projects as specified in Schedules 2, Schedule 3, okay, of the EIA ordinance. That's include, as highlighted for Schedules 2 is a major airport, railway, port facilities. You're able to find the rest of the categorizations in the ordinance itself. Schedule 3 is mainly about the engineering feasibility studies of any urban development, but with over 20 hectares or 100,000 in populations and so on. Okay, Schedule 4 is just telling you about possible matters that could be specified in the environmental permit. All right. As we are aware that EPD don't have all the expertise in-house to verify all the assessment need to be carried out during in the EIA report. So they will need support. Okay, they will need support externally from other government departments. Well, on various aspects. Okay, like for example, for the landscape and visual impact assessment, they will rely advisors from Department of Planning Department. Okay, for the transportation handling of dangerous goods, they will rely on the Fire Services Department. For the traffic noise or emission studies, they will rely on information from the transport. So that means the Commissioner of Transport would need to have a review on whatever assumptions is made in the EIA report. So it's a really wide diversity of vetting input from across the government. And the Advisory Council on the Environment is a very, very important body. They will actually, the role is to advise the government on the environmental status and provide advices. On the EIA aspect, okay, the EIA report will need to go through vetting review by the ACE, what we call, all right? But some of you are aware that not every single EIA will need to go through to the main board of the ACE. Now, mainly they will be handled by the EIA subcommittees under the Advisory on the Environmental Council, right? Okay, only those controversial ones will need to be discussed in both panels. And the ESMG. Now, for you, for some of you who are working in the consultant will know about the Environmental Study Management Group. The importance of this group is actually is to resolve issues across departments. Okay, to resolve issues between the project proponent, the consultants, and the relevant government department on any issues related to the methodologies, related to the EIA findings, and so on. So this is actually the platform is chaired by EPD, okay, and we need to discuss and resolve any technical issues in this platform in order to examine whether EIA report is suitable for public inspection. And another piece of issues that is also important in the EIO process is the material change. Now, material change is very, very crucial when you apply for the further environmental permit, or if you decide to vary the condition of the environmental permit. Okay, in this process, in the application process for these permits, you will need to demonstrate to EPD that there is no material change in order for them to allow you to apply for the variations or to apply for the further to environmental permit. By means of no material change is that whatever it is proposing will be the environmental impact arising from the changes will be no worse than the assumptions made in the EIA report that was adopted previously. Okay, so this is important to know about the definition of material change. Okay, and okay, there's a workflow highlighted here. We'll actually show you how to define whether any changes to the designated project will be classified as with a material change or not. Okay, so I will not go through them in details. I think you will be able to have a look at it, yourself. When this PowerPoint presentations is up in the on the website, as well as information could be obtained from the EPD website. Right, appeal. Now it's just like any other ordinances. I mean, there are mechanisms for appeal for decision made throughout the EIO process. Okay, for the appeal against the decision made starting from when EPD issued the study brief, okay, the study requirements imposed by EPD, you could appeal. I mean, if it's something that you consider is not applicable to a project, you could appeal. Okay, if you apply to apply for the environmental permit through the direct applications, which is the quickest way. And EPD will not allow you to do so. You could appeal. When EPD issue you with the environmental permit, the conditions you think is not applicable, you could appeal. Well, but unfortunately, it's not everyone can appeal under this mechanism. It's only the project proponent who are able to launch an appeal. Because they are under the EIA ordinance, there are no third parties appeal process. So that's why, nowadays many people is through the judicial review to launch an appeal against others' project on the EIA aspect. Now, so that's the first part of the EIA ordinance. So which means it's the EIA part, the early planning stage part. Now, so once you have obtained the environmental permit, once the EIA report is approved by EPD, then there is a whole series of requirements that the project proponent will need to satisfy satisfy EPD under the environmental permit. That's actually including the employment of the independent environmental checkers, the employment of the environmental team, the relevant submissions under the environmental permit before works can start, as well as the baseline and so on. Okay, there's a huge chunk of permits requirements that need to fulfill before works can start. Okay, so it's important to know what they are. Okay, of course, most of them are, well, all of them are actually written in the environmental permit. And there is a guidance notes about each of them, like the role of the independent environmental checkers, as well as the implementation schedules that was actually developed during the EIA stage. That will actually tell you, how and what to follow. Okay, so for the detailed executions, that you were able to make reference to the EIA ordinance guidance notes. That's also available in the EPD's help bench website. Now, alternative and evaluations. Sorry, we cannot tell you exactly, how and what you could do in order to fulfill with such requirements under the ordinance. But in general, because they are case-by-case specific evaluations, will be applied to different projects and so on. But in general, EPD will be spending quite some time, I say a lot of times, to discuss with the project proponent about the evaluations of alternative. Alternative in terms of project alignments, okay. Alternative could be in terms of construction methodologies, the mode of operations. So what EPD mainly will concern about is to, for the project proponent to put forward a solution, to put forward a project with the least environmental impact. Well, EPD doesn't care about cost, okay, to the project proponent, but well, that's usually the case, okay. Sorry, but it's true. I mean, we've been hearing so many this not criticism, but suggestions, So you just need to think of solutions that would have the least environmental impact put forward in order for you to, in order for your EIA report to be approved and endorsed. Okay. Now the impact evaluations during the EIA process. Now there are a series of impact need to be evaluated under the EIA ordinance, and of course there are various guidelines being published in the EIA help bench guidelines. Okay, and you are able to make reference to. So today, Freeman and I will be brief you about some pointers, things that you were able to you need to be aware of when you carry out such evaluations. So I will be focusing on 4 issues. First is the cultural heritage, and the second one will be the waste management. Third is the land contaminations, and the final one I will go through will be the landscape visual. So for the rest of the other impact evaluations, I will leave it to Freeman to go through that with you. Okay. Right, cultural heritage. Now, a lot of information could be found in AMO's website. So AMO is actually under the management of LCSD. So you're able to find relevant information about the declared monument, about the built heritage on the AMO website. Okay, but important to note is that the website doesn't tell you everything. Okay, the way how you're going to carry out the evaluations, how it is being done. I suggest you are able to read through some reference materials that Freeman will be able to provide you later on, as well as to read through some of those EIA reports with heavy cultural heritage issues, okay, such as maybe the shutting to central links, Song Toy area, okay. So there are a lot of cultural heritage assessments being done and fieldwork has been done. So you're able to learn more about how it is being practiced by the industry. On top of information you could find on the AMO website. So that's the part on the cultural heritage, right? For the construction waste issues, now it is very, very important issues for the practitioners to acknowledge right from the beginning of the project, at the planning stage or design stage of the project, because of course you need to tell the project proponent, or you got to tell the senior management the type of cost that you'll be anticipating for disposing materials during the construction works. Now, there's a huge chunk of charging from EPD for disposing materials to different facilities. The cost ranging from the cheapest to the public filling area, then there will be more, if you dispose off to the sorting facilities and into landfill. Okay, so of course, during the project planning stage, you got to advise the client, advise your senior management about the possible cost in handling the waste disposal, right? Okay, and of course, during the construction stage, before it starts, you also got to learn about how you were able to start with the disposal operations, including applying for the billing account for them that's mainly responsible by the contractor. Apply for the billing account in order to allow them to begin with the disposal operations. So at least the government will back charge the account holder. Okay, so that's on the general handling of construction waste. Now, if we talk more about more specific disposal of marine sediment in Hong Kong, right? During the EIA report, of course, there are assessment need to carry out to determine the exact quantity of sediment need to be disposed during the construction stage. Okay, and it's all been reported in the EIA report. So whenever the contractor is on board, they just need to follow the EIA recommendations. And in particular, they need to make strong observations, but to make strong reference to the requirements defined under the dumping at sea ordinance, we call the DASO. Okay, it's been controlled by EPD DASO sessions. Okay, they will actually tell you exactly the disposal methodologies, the type of information you need to prepare in order to apply for the dumping permit before you could dispose marine sediment into the sea. There is a lot of requirements written in the ordinance, as well as a lot of requirements imposed by EPD DASO sessions. You need to follow, you need to agree, you need to implement before you start with the disposal of sediment into the sea. And information, of course, could be found in the reference link below. For the land contaminations. Yes, back in Hong Kong, up to 2007, we were using the Touch B as the assessment criteria. Then subsequently, that we in Hong Kong had been agreed to adopt the risk-based remediation goal. It's called the RBRG, something like the computer, say RBG or whatever, but don't mix it up. But it's a RBRG. It's actually the guidelines telling people what to follow in order to handle any land contamination issues. And there are a series of guidelines being published by EPD, ranging from the assessment itself and how it is being practiced, and the way the RBRG, the way how to execute it, as well as the site investigation, how it is being done. Okay, so it is important information that you need to be aware of, where to find such information and what is applicable to the current practice. In this, you actually, one of the information you're able to learn, to know about, is about the way to handle the land contamination issues. Okay, the land contaminant, okay, and what the type of remediation that is currently being implemented in Hong Kong. Okay, it is important to know about the way to handle, how to treat the land contaminant, like the metals, the PCB. Those are the frequently you could identify in any contaminated site in Hong Kong. Now, the next session will be the landscape and visuals. Okay, landscape and visual issues is mainly to deal with how the project being beautified. Okay, in order to provide some, we always use the words aesthetic pleasing. Okay, how to beautify the project itself. Okay, and this is actually, we need to, from time to time, need to agree with the, we need to talk to the vetting authority. That is actually, it's a planning department. Now, the hint is that, when you deal with planning department, of course you need to send someone right, send some right person to talk to them. Okay, usually engineer might try to avoid, okay, because engineer and Plan D, they sometimes have different views. But important, well, the hint is that you may want to send landscape architect or architect to talk about, the artistic impressions, to talk about, the way you beautify, how you're going to design the project. Okay, that will actually make it a more success, when you talk to Plan D about the project landscape and visual impact. Okay, just like all other impact assessment, landscape and visual, the process is that yes, first of course you need to identify the possible impact, and secondly, of course, you need, just like noise and air, and then you need to identify, the potential receivers nearby, and do the evaluations and propose mitigations, and see whether there are any residual impact need to be handled. Okay, so although it is very, well, I consider it is quite subjective, when we handle such a landscape and visual impact assessment with Plan D stroke EPD. But sending someone, talk the same language, providing, good design on the project, and the way how to beautify the project is actually is the main goal, and that will actually lead you to a success when you handle such impact assessment. And of course, there are guidelines you could make reference to regarding the landscape visual and impact assessment under the EIA ordinance. Okay, so you're able to find out more, information on the evaluations and the requirements in this guiding notes. Okay, so for the fourth session, I want to go through with you, and let's come to the end. And I will leave it to Truman to continue with your question. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I will use the rest of the time to go through the other aspect of the EIA, largely air quality, health impact assessment, ecology, water quality assessment, and as well as hazard and sewage and sewage. Really, we sort of air quality is one of my things. So, you might see quite a lot of details here, and but I think for environmental impact assessment, the most important thing is to identify the issue that is of concern, like what is going to be emitted from your project. And for example, if it's a power station, then there will be chimney emissions. And for highway infrastructure, then vehicle emission is going to be the key. And those are defined as the project-induced impact, which is probably the most important part that you need to address. And for the air quality impact assessment, you can't just look at what you contribute, i.e. the project-induced impact. You also need to look at the cumulative effect. That's meaning, there will be other emissions within the study area that you need to look at. Most of the time, the study brief will dictate a study area of like 500 meters from the proposed development. And that means within that 500 meters, you need to include all the emissions within that 500 meters as part of the cumulative impact assessment. And also, I think we can't ignore what's influencing the background. And the background actually has a lot of contributions. And in some situation, if you have include, the sources within the 500 meters, they actually form part of the background. So sometimes, we need to do some more detailed analysis to avoid the double counting. But those are probably the advanced bit, which I won't go into too much details. But generally, to address the air quality impact, we need to understand the source of the emissions, that is the emission strength. And then we also need to understand the meteorology, that meaning where the wind is coming from and blowing towards. Is it the high wind speed or low wind speed? Because the dispersion will be different. Basically, I think you probably will have that in the afternoon under the air section. The dispersion in respect to the emission is there is a relationship of 1/u, u being the wind speed. So so the higher the wind speed, the lower the concentration. So that's something you need to understand as part of the EIA process. And so we need to obtain the meteorological conditions from the observatory, or we can also use the worldwide weather forecast. One of them is WRF, WRF, and or in the old days MM5 is also used. And those are sort of the modeling input parameter. I mean, you can just go to observatory to ask for 1 year data, and then you put it into model. Then the model will give you the assessment results. And there's a proof model under the DPD air quality modeling guideline. And again, I mean, I think that those will hopefully cover in the air section in the afternoon. So I won't go into detail, but I will just give you some information about how we determine the background air quality for Hong Kong. In the old days, we actually just average the most recent past 5 years average concentration to represent the background air quality in a lot of our impact assessment. If you go into some of the old EIA report. But more recently, we actually been adopting a forecasting system to estimate the background air quality for in the future. And the development of the path model has been going through a very long process, and since the late 90s, and the first version, and it's recently updated and also released actually only last year in 2016, early 2016. This is now on the web of the EPD website, and you can go in, and if this spot is where you want to do an assessment, i.e. the grid cell 3727, then you can just click that grid cell, and then this will come up, grid cell 3727, and then you can choose the meteorology, and also which year, and they already run those models to up to the 2020. But beyond 2020, then you may need to do some of your own path model. I think hopefully, in the years to come, this will be extended by EPD. But at the moment, this is the only up-to-date information that you can get. And also you can get at a different height, because this is a three-dimensional model. If you look at it, that grid is only 2D, but actually it got a three-dimensional element. Like if for a high-rise building on the light 24 of the high-rise building, it would be more relevant to pick L4, which is above ground, between 55 meter to 77 meter above ground. So those are what you can select, and then the model will give you a background concentration, including all sources, the road and nearby emissions, aircraft, the shipping. Those are the major emission sources, so that you will be able to draw from the model output, and you don't need to do it. But if you are doing things beyond 2020, then you will need to do your own estimate. But running path is quite complicated, so it's not recommended. But in some situations you have to, and you also need to work with EPD a lot in developing that set of data. And well, I think those may fatten you, but actually, don't worry about it. This probably won't come out in the exam questions. It's just my interest. this might, although we are not asking you the number. It's the Hong Kong air quality objective. Once you assess the model results, the project induced plus the 500 meter in the vicinity to come up with the cumulative assessment plus the background, then we compare with this set of criteria. This is under the law, under the Air Pollution Control Ordinance, and it has issued Hong Kong air quality objectives, and this been recently updated in about 4 or 5 years ago, and largely these concentration limits were referring to the concentration level, not which might cause you some health effect if you are exceeding those guidelines. And largely, all this sort of reference follow closely with the World Health Organization in terms of the air quality pollution concentration with respect to the health-related effect, and but not all of them are using the ultimate guideline under the WHO, like the RSP, the PM10 and the PM2.5. There's still room for us to improve, and that's why the government are now reviewing this set of air quality objectives with a view of further updating that. So those are the air quality which I like to share, and very closely I already mentioned, the set of air quality objectives are health related, and but in some of the assessments, we don't just look at the air quality issue. We also look at other potential health effects. And for example, we will be some of the product may expose or may emit some of the compound of potential concern. What is that? The COPCS, and they are largely some of the compound or chemicals that is not listed in the previous of air quality objectives. And under the air quality objectives, they are all air pollutants except lead. Lead is also considered as heavy metal, but I think lead has a history of being used quite widely, like the petrol additive, but now no longer used. So that actually reduce the significance of putting lead under the air quality objective. But anyway, it's historical. And what we now concerned here is other heavy metals or the organics compounds. Some of them are carcinogenics and metals as well. And like arsenic, cadmium, mercury, those are the compounds of potential concern. And the effect may be more longer term, and they might not have too much of the acute effect. And the exposure pathway is also multiple. It's not just like air quality. We only look at the inhalation, right? So I mean, the inhalation health impact assessment actually is part of the air quality assessment. We use the air quality model to predict the pollution concentration at receivers, and then if there is a air quality objective, you can just compare, and that's the health related. But if there is some other potential, some other compounds of potential concern, then we need to look at individual compounds, because all of this sort of compound has different toxicity, and that's why, apart from the exposure assessment, we need to carry out toxicity assessment. That is how much you can take in, and then into your body, and then causing any health effect. And a lot of those were done by, again, World Health Organization, as well as the US EPA, the Integrated Risk Information System. Will give you some level of some more safe level, and the assessment will use the exposure pathway to see how much they will inhale and also or ingest. And in most of the case, ingestions or consumption of food and drinks are the main sort of exposure pathway for this type of exposure. And a lot of the times, the assessment will present sort of the incremental life cancer risk as sort of the assessment result. and whether this is acceptable under sort of the World Health Organization guideline or the US EPA guideline. So move to quite a different subject, ecology. Ecology is probably one of the more sort of focused area under the EIA report, and a lot of the green group will be very interested in terms of what sort of ecological impact may arise from sort of the proposed project. And I think Henry showed the express rail link projects, and it's also in the past there's the other projects that go through very sensitive ecological area, and so it's very important to define what is important ecological habitat. And here, it's sort of also already mentioned, I mean, itself, the listed under the Note 1 and Note 2 of the Appendix A, which actually in the next 2 slides, I will show you later, so I won't go through in details. But we also need to understand, if we are anticipating some ecological impact arise from a project, what needs to be done. And I think you see some of the red lines, sort of, I hope you can read it, but if not, then this will be uploaded. And I think which highlight the most important things that we try not to do is, if there is a potential impact, we should try first avoid it, by considering other alternatives. I think Henry rightly pointed out in the beginning of the assessment evaluation. I think the basic concept of EIA is avoidance. If by all means, if the project is going to be infringing on those sensitive areas, try avoid it. And if not, then we will try to reduce the extent of the impact. I think avoidance, one of the, just quote one example because I get into the other points. And like the Long Valley, there was a proposal of building a railway above the Long Valley, and actually that's one of the case, or very few cases that EIA was not approved, and because of the potential impact during construction phase would be insurmountable. And so, because initially the engine, the proponent did not try to avoid it totally. It tried only avoid it or reduce the impact by constructing a viaduct structure, not on embankment. So I mean there is only footing of the pier, or the will be impacted on the agricultural wetland, and so this is still considered not quite acceptable at the time when the report was submitted to the EPD and ACE. So I think after that rejections, the proponent reconsider other alternatives and options, and now the railway is going under the Long Valley. This is the basic concept of avoidance in the EIA. You avoid encroaching the agricultural wetland entirely. I think that's the most important thing in the conducting of the ecological impact assessment. But of course, you know, if you have a project at a site, then you can't really, you know, sort of avoid it totally. So there is other situation. You try to find less sensitive area to let your project go through, or reduce the footprint of your project, and hence, you know, reduce the extent of the impact. And only when you exhaust these options, then you will try to, you know, consider compensation. And off-site mitigation is the very, very last resort. That's why I highlighted wet here. And that shall only be considered when the potential for providing adequate on-site measures has been exhausted. So those are the sequence and the hierarchy of the ecological impact assessment. And just show you some example of you know, the evaluation of different sites and habitats, and when conducting the ecological impact assessment, we look at the naturalness, you know, I mean, whether it's sort of being disturbed by artificial sort of activities or not, and also the size, you know, obviously a bigger size has more value than a smaller one, and also look at the ecological diversity. I mean, which is actually, you know, determine the ecological value of that site, and also whether you can find very rare species, and which is considered as very important. And finally, I think the creatability is talking about the mitigation. I mean, or if you have affected those, whether it will be regrown and re-established as part of your mitigation. I promise you this, you know, list showing what is the of conservation importance and what is more significant. And I think the top 9 lists, and actually some of them have you know, statutory protection, like the country park, you know, the SSSI, marine reserve, and also like the Ramsar site, the inner deep bay or the deep bay buffer zone. They all have certain statutory designations, and so they are all very important habitat that we need to protect, and or not just protect, we need to avoid if there's a proposal to go through this type of destination, and we will need to be very, very careful. And also the rest are, you know, like the woodland, the lateral coastline, mudflat or lateral coast, freshwater stream, etc. They are also very important to consider. And this is the guidance notes on the baseline survey, both covering the terrestrial as well as the marine. I won't go through it in details, and you can always look at it in detail. Let's move on to the water quality impact, and it's also covered under the Water Pollution Control Ordinance. Again, you may, I'm sure you know. Professor Casey Ho and Anthony Ma will speak about that in the afternoon. But I will focus on the assessment and the evaluation. Well, I think basically the assessment in EIA will sometimes will look at the quantity and quality. mainly focus on the quantity of the pollutants as well as the receiving bodies. And a lot of the time we look at the receiving body, including the water control zone, and then if there's effluent from the projects, then we need to understand the quantity as well as what is inside. In a lot of the situation, it's like the sewage treatment works. The effluent quality is according to the design criteria, and then once it gets into the lateral water, it gets dispersed like the air quality issue, and it also has specialized model. In Hong Kong, most of them would be addressed by the Delphi-D model, and then after the dispersion, we can calculate the concentration at receiving, such as the water receiving body, fish culture zone as one, and also some water intake is also considered as water sensitive, and you may affect the system of cooling water system if there is a water intake along the coastline, and there is a technical memorandum addressing the effluent discharge, and I won't go through the other details, and moving on to hazard assessment. This is quite specialized and largely addressing some of the so-called potentially hazardous installation, PHIs. PHIs actually is defined under the Hong Kong Planning Standard and Guideline, largely addressing some of the hazardous installations. Most of them are field related, like the LPG storage, petrol or naphtha, and as well as some chemical storage. Most of the use in Hong Kong would be like chlorine storage as part of the water treatment system, and for disinfection use. I think like in most of the swimming pool, they won't use chlorine, and but they use hypochlorite and or ozone sometimes. So then these are not classified as potential hazardous installation, because even on-site generation of chlorine or ozone is not. And but if you store more than 10 tons, or in then you will consider as a hazardous installation. Those are some of the key elements that you need to understand. And also, I think this, the so-called RN curve is also you need to understand in interpreting what is the potential risk under the project. And you can see this curve is separate basically the potential risk into 3 parts. This is talking about fatality. The acceptable standard, so-called acceptable risk, 1 in 100,000 of fatality, 1 fatality, at the chance of 1 to 100,000. And so we don't want, there's a 1 to 100,000 chance of fatality in any project. Okay, if there is release of chlorine or explosion of LPG in coast vicinity, then you will probably get into this region, and that's why there's consultation zone concept in under the development of the PHI guideline. And also when we look at the hazard assessment in the EIA, we also look at what is the exposed width if you allow a new installation near a residential area, for example. And acceptable and unacceptable is very clear. But in between there is so-called the RLAP region. The RLAP region is so-called as low as reasonable practicable. That's meaning if the predicted width of certain project is located within this area. Within this area is unacceptable, then end of story. So you won't have this new project built. But if you can somehow address the width and then get down to this area, then it's still not quite acceptable. You still need to try your very best to further lower the potential width if the project is located in this area. So moving forward, sewage. It's very similar to the water quality assessment, I think, or in some of the sewage or sewerage projects. They are classified as designated projects under the Schedule 2, and even some of the sewage pumping stations with more than 2,000 meter cube per day, located within 150 meters from septic receivers, is considered as designated projects. Because sewage has its sort of intrinsic characteristic, it might smell, and also pumping station may be noisy, and that's why this can also be defined as a designated project. Treatment works is definitely a designated project. So they will need an environmental impact assessment to address. And but pumping station, if it's well designed, they might go through, direct application for environmental permits. And we will need to look at, the quality of the effluent, the quantity discharge, and also related piping or the pipeline, especially for underwater pipeline, then you might need dredgings and for the installation, and hence more related potential impact arise from this type of project, and so most of the time you will need an EIA to address. Very quickly, I always overrun, sorry. Hopefully I catch up before the lunch break. This is talking about the stakeholder engagement process or the public involvement. And for general public, we have two opportunities to comment during the whole EIA process. First one is the issue of the project profile. Everyone can make comment within the 14 days. And also when EIA report is published, during the first 30 days, the public is allowed to make comments, and this comment will be taken into consideration under the authority, as well as the Advisory Council on the Environment will also look at it. So moving to a slightly different topic, that is the strategic environmental assessment, which is not a statutory process, and it's a sort of a voluntary assessment for the project proponent. And the main purpose of this is really before the formulation of a definitive project. And it's just sort of, like consideration of different transport proposal, including railway, road, and even pedestrianization, for example. You can compare these three types of options, and they are more strategic in a sense. So, I mean, those could be considered as strategic environmental assessment. Like in the old days, the third comprehensive transport study, the railway development strategy, those assessments will be considered as strategic environmental assessment. And technically, SEA applies to the assessment of policy, plan, or program. So they are not for the purpose of specific project or proposal. They are more general, and that's why the difference. And I think this is good enough for you if you can understand that. So I come to the end of my presentation, and this is just the next two slides is on the suggested reading material. Largely, you can go to the EPD website. There is a dedicated EIA web on covering all this sort of guidance look and assessment methodology. This is the 2-page, more than 2 page.